Hey guys, Mike here, Grinding Gears Garage. We are getting ready to do some repair work on this 85, 86, I'm not sure 100% of the year, but the 85, 86 LT250r engine we picked up. We got our new gaskets in. We ordered a top end gasket kit because when we got the motor, the head was off, so we wanted a new head gasket. But since we got to do seals, we bought a complete engine gasket kit from Kinetic, and we have our engine seals from Winderosa. So we're going to dive into this, show you guys step by step. We're going to try and do the seals without splitting the cases, but we are going to put all new seals on the top end, a new base gasket, new head gasket. We're going to take the flywheel and the stator off and replace that seal, these two seals, and then the Kickstarter seal, the clutch seal, and anything else we come across that we need to replace. So just stick with us. We'll go over tools and everything as we go through the steps. It's kind of hard to list everything we need in order before we really get to it. So stick along today. We're going to do some repair work. Hopefully we get this thing done and we can put it up for sale. So first things first, if you've just pulled the engine out of your bike, you may want to drain the oil, unless you haven't. If you have done it already, you're ahead of the game. But we got this, we didn't know, so we pulled the plug out, which we're going to get the right drain plug. This is just a NPT plug. We're going to get something with a flange on it to actually stop the oil. So our oil's drained, drain it into an oil pan. Be careful. Sometimes I run ATF in my two-stroke engines in the gear case. Be careful if it has ATF, don't mix it with your oil. Whoever recycles your oil won't take it with trans fluid in it. So we're going to get set up here, start breaking down our engine. So we're going to start with the head here. We have our 13 millimeter on our ratchet. These shouldn't be too tight. Oops, that's a better view. These are only like 20, 25 foot-pounds. So just going to set these off to the side. And as we go through everything, we're going to place it in plastic baggies, label it so you guys can keep track. It's one of the best things that we can give you as a tip. Always label everything, because you're going to have a motor sitting on the shelf like our my XR250L that's been apart for about 6 months now. You just don't have time to get back to it. So we recommend putting it all in baggies, labeling it, because you're going to forget in 6 months. So we're just going to pop all these bolts out and remove our head. So now we got all our bolts off. We're going to take our head off, set it off to the side. Looks like somebody used some copper gasket on it. We're going to have to clean that up a little bit. So we're going to pop off our head gasket. So now that we got the head off, we're going to remove the jug from the base of the engine. There's 4 13 millimeter bolts. One here, one back here, and one here. This plate here, if you didn't see our earlier video of our leak down test for this engine, this is just a plate we made up to seal the exhaust port for our leak down. That's just going to stay on because we're going to leak down test after we're finished. And then there's 2 11 millimeter bolts right here. We're going to go ahead and remove them and remove the jug from the engine cases. So we got our jug off of the engine half. As you can see on the 85, 86, here's your reed cage. There's only 4 reeds instead of on the other years how they bolt on the outside of the jug. So you can see this piston is fairly new, very little wear on it. Somebody went a little crazy with the copper spray gasket there, and the top end is new as well. It's at the stock bore, so whoever purchases this engine will have plenty of life left of that jug. They can hone it out a few times. So we're now down to the base. We're going to take off our base gasket here. This is all going to have to be cleaned up before we install our new base gasket. Get all this copper junk off of here. So we're going to take all this off, and then we're going to do the stator side first. We actually are going to replace the stator. I have 2 other engines I'm going to just grab one off of for this, and then I'll order a Ricky stator. I'm probably going to take it off of our restoration, and then I'll get a new Ricky stator for that. So it it's all nice and new since we're doing a restoration. So we're gonna set up here, grab some tools, take our flywheel off, go from there. So we got everything set up here. We have our flywheel puller. This is actually the same thread pitch as a Yamaha Blaster. So we actually have two of these because I bought one for each. Didn't realize they were the same. And we also have this nice tool that we purchased from Tusk. There's a flywheel holder, and on the other side it's for a clutch basket. So you can hold the two while using an impact. So we got that set up. We're going to use our impact here with a 17, pull the flywheel off, and then we will remove the stator. Forgot to mention this, your flywheel puller is left-hand thread. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey does not apply here. You're going to screw it in lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. They are fine thread, so it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get it in. We do not have a flywheel nut on ours. I'm going to actually take a step over to our restoration and figure out the size, and I will tell you that right after this clip. 17 millimeter is what you need to remove your flywheel nut before you get to the spot. So we have our impact here. We're going to tighten it. You're going to run the stud in to pull the flywheel out. There we go. Simple as that. The flywheel is tapered. The shaft here is tapered, so that's why the flywheel needs to be pulled out. When you tighten the nut down, it seats on this taper here, and that's that. So we're going to pull this stator out. We're going to you can see the wires are quite short here, so I don't know if we can send it out to get repaired or maybe send it to get refurbed, because those stator coils look pretty bad. This one actually has a zip tie on it holding the coil together, so that's not good. So we're going to pull that out, go over to our restoration, pop the flywheel off of that, and grab our stator to drop in this. So we got our stator out of an 87. Wiring all matches, just shaped a little bit different. That's all it'll fit in here nicely. The wiring just exits a little bit differently, but we can make that work. We figured out why our other motor had a bad leak down. The crank seal was bad. The crank seal wasn't even in the pocket. It was off of the shaft and it was hanging out, like out here underneath the stator. So we hopefully won't have to rebuild that totally. We can just push the seal back in and be good to go. That'll be nice, really nice. So we're going to go ahead and remove our 3 seals here on this side. I think we can do it without splitting the case. Let's give it a go. So as you can see, the previous owner, not necessarily the one we bought it from, but a previous owner, as you can see, they kind of did a jerry rig on it. They used Permatex to kind of seal it off. So we were going to scrape all that out of the way. If this is your idea of a repair, please stop working on four-wheelers, or stop working on everything in general. A seal kit's like 35 bucks. Just take the time to fix it the right way. This stuff is extremely annoying when you have to clean all this gunk off of this pocket. That's all we have to say about that. We're going to clean these two off and show you guys removing the seals. So with the final drive, there's this little spacer here. We have to clean up our output shaft. The splines are a little dinged up. But if you pull that spacer out, you then can get a screwdriver in there and the seal is out. So we're going to grab our new one, go ahead and pop that in. We're going to try and clean out all this gunk with the seals in so we don't damage anything, get any of this stuff into the bearing. And then we're going to take a file and try and clean this up so we can get that spacer, and whoever buys it doesn't have a problem getting their new sprocket on and off. So with the final drive, there's this little spacer here. We have to clean up our output shaft. The splines are a little dinged up. But if you pull that spacer out, you then can get a screwdriver in there and the seal is out. So we're going to grab our new one, go ahead and pop that in. We're going to try and clean out all this gunk with the seals in so we don't damage anything, get any of this stuff into the bearing. And then we're going to take a file and try and clean this up so we can get that spacer, and whoever buys it doesn't have a problem getting their new sprocket on and off. So when replacing seals, we always recommend keeping the old one handy so you can compare it to the new one. And then we're just going to push it on in there, and then we're going to grab a punch or something. I'm not sure what we're going to use. Usually we use sockets that fit that. Let's see what we got here. See if we got something that's close. Look at that. A 32 millimeter is just about on the money. So we're going to grab our mallet here. You want to make sure you don't use something sharp like a screwdriver. It could damage the seal. And drive this in. No, it looks like we're bottomed out there. So we're going to grab one of our punches. Has a clean edge on it. Just going to give it a couple final taps so she's seated. Now we're going to move on to our gear selector. I can't remove it a little bit. So we're going to have to dig all of the crap out of this one too. So we were able, with our little screwdriver here, able to push it in between the shifter shaft and the seal and then just work it around, pop it up. We're going to take, the surface is pretty clean actually. Clean some of that gunk off of there. Once again, please do not fix seals like this. It's a joke. So we're going to clean all this up, grab our new seal, which is right here, and then we're going to install that. Then we can move on to our crank seal. So we have our new seal kind of installed. We're going to take our punch here, just lightly tap it in, and we're going to grab something to drive this in the rest of the way. You don't want to use anything sharp like a screwdriver. I got to grab, usually we use a socket, but since this shaft is so large, you may be able to get away with nice. Looks like we can use a 17 millimeter. It's a little too big. I'm going to see if I can find a 16 or a 15. See if we can drive that seal the rest of the way in. So we got that seal fully seated. Looks like a 5/8 standard socket. Did the trick. It's perfect. We're going to grab some stuff together to pull out our crank seal. So we moved on to our crank seal. It's our first time doing one with actually the cases not being split. So I just took a screwdriver and worked it into the seal and worked it around, and it popped right up. No damage to the crank at all. The seal is obviously damaged, but it's not that big of a deal. We're replacing it anyway. Just one little piece of seal in here. There it is. So we got that out. We are going to grab our new seal, which, as you can see, this one is double lipped. This is for the other side of the crank. This one right here, single lip, is for the flywheel side. This one's double lipped because it needs to keep the trans oil out of the case, the part of the crank, and it needs to keep the oil and gas from the crank going into the gear case. So we're going to reinstall this. Presses in there fairly simple, and we are going to grab, a socket won't fit, so we're going to use our punch and drive that in the rest of the way. So our crank seal's all the way in. Now we can start reassembling. Take our new stator, well, new/used stator. Going to reinstall that. I have to kind of reroute the wiring before we get to that. So we're going to reroute the wiring and then bolt our new/used stator in. So we have our stator installed. We put a little dab of Never Sees, the blue stuff on these so they don't rattle loose. They are slotted. We set it up in the middle. If your bike's acting up and needs to be adjusted, you can advance or retard the timing back and forth. I'm not sure, I forget which direction's which. I'd have to look in the user manual. But now that we have this installed, we're going to grab our flywheel nut, and we're going to install that. And I have to look up the torque. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. So we have our stator installed. We put a little dab of Never Sees, the blue stuff on these so they don't rattle loose. They are slotted. We set it up in the middle. If your bike's acting up and needs to be adjusted, you can advance or retard the timing back and forth. I'm not sure, I forget which direction's which. I'd have to look in the user manual. But now that we have this installed, we're gonna grab our flywheel nut, and we're gonna install that, and I have to look up the torque. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. So as you can see, there's a Woodruff key right there on your crankshaft, which lines up with the key on your flywheel. This could be a little pain in the balls because it is magnetic. Pull itself in, there we go. Got that seated. And there's our nut here. Start that. They recommend putting a little dab of Never Sees, or not Never Sees, Loctite on that as well. Our threads are a little boogered, so we are going to grab our thread file and clean these up real quick. Tighten that down, torque it. Alright, so we got our flywheel nut on. We had to go get a die to chase our threads. We couldn't clean it up with our thread file, so we tightened that down. It's 65 to 72 foot-pounds. I think we did 68, just kind of in the middle. So we're done on this side of the engine. You can put your stator cover back on. We have ours getting blueprinted right now, so we don't have ours, but it's just 4 bolts. That goes back on. If you're done with this side, we're gonna flip the engine over. Oops. And we're gonna focus on the clutch side of the engine. So, at this point, we're going to pop our cover off, take our water pump apart, which I believe, yeah, we have the gaskets for that. So we're gonna pop our water pump apart. We're going to, clean up and start taking apart. There we go. Our clutch side. These are all Phillips, so we're probably going to use our hand impact that we have to break these loose because they're probably going to fight us. So we're going to get everything set up, get all the tools we need together, start breaking down this side.